everyone, I hope you've had a great week. Today we're going to walk through lessons 117 to 120. So let's get started. This week you're going to need your lessons manual, the student worksheet book, the math card games manual with the game cards, the tangrams, a drawing board, the T-square, the 45 triangle, the geometry reflector, and the AL abacus. This week, your child is going to have two lessons that will continue working with geometry and two lessons that will start working on factors, which is also an introduction to division. So let's get started by turning to lesson 117. Now for the warm-up of this lesson, you're going to have your child work through section 3 on warm-up practice sheet 4. The answers are listed in the lesson manual. Look at the section called Constructing Trapezoids. In this section, your child is going to compare rectangles with trapezoids, specifically on how many parallel lines there are for each shape. Now, if your child needs to review trapezoids, they were covered in lesson 74. So feel free to go back to lesson 74 and review trapezoids. Your child is then going to build 5 trapezoids, different trapezoids, using any 2 of their tangram pieces. Examples of how those will be built is shown in the lesson manual, but you're going to want to let your child explore and play around. Don't just give them the answer. Make sure that they're figuring that out on their own. For the large trapezoids, section of the lesson, your child is going to use more than 2 tangram pieces to build larger trapezoids. And the answers to that is listed on the top of the second page of the lesson. You will then follow up with asking questions about the trapezoids right underneath that, those examples of the larger trapezoids. Then you're going to give your child worksheet 81. And in this worksheet, your child is going to use different tangram pieces to fill in this larger trapezoid. So for example, they're going to put one trapezoid there, or trapezoid. They're going to put one tangram piece there, and then another piece there. And I'm not holding it up very well, but they can build that trapezoid there, and then they're going to draw that how they built it using on this particular one. So this here is the exploration. This here is the documentation, where they're going to record their findings using their drawing tools. Answers are included in the lesson manual. Now, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson, so you're going to want to make sure you pick a game that will keep up your child's math facts. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 118. The warm-up section for this lesson is going to have your child complete section 1 on warm-up practice sheet number 5. Answers, again, are in the lesson manual. For the section called Making Reflections with the Reflector, you are going to use the geometry reflector, and that's what this manipulative is. Now, when you use the reflector, you can see the reflection of the object on the other side. So if I were to put, I'm not going to be able to show you, maybe I can a little bit. See how that I'm putting this shape here? You can see it reflect here on this other side. So that's what you're going to have your child do. You're going to have your child put a large rectangle or triangle on this side. They're going to see that reflection through that reflector, and then they're going to line up a triangle on the other side, line it on up. They're going to then do the same thing. If you look at the top of the second page of the lesson, they're going to do the same thing with another shape with the large triangle and the parallelogram. Again, looking through it, setting up the first shape and then looking through it and then reflecting it on the other side. Then you're going to lift up that geometry reflector, and you are going to say that that line separating those two sets of shapes is called line of symmetry. Now you're going to do that several different times with different shapes, so that your child gets familiar with what the line of symmetry is. Now, when I was working with my kids, I would always help them learn that the line of symmetry is kind of like a mirror, in that it mirrors the opposite side. So whatever is on this side mirrors itself on that side. You are then going to have your child make several other shapes using the geometry reflectors, see the reflection, remove the reflectors, show the line of symmetry again, and do this enough times until your child is familiar with the term line of symmetry. Then you're going to give your child worksheet 82 to complete. Now on this worksheet, your student is going to be given a shape and the line of symmetry. And then they are going to draw what that reflection would be. Now, if it's helpful for them, go ahead and let them use the geometry reflector on that side of that shape, and line it up where the line of symmetry is, because they will then see what the shape is going to look like, and then they can draw that reflection a little easier. Make sure you have your child complete the worksheet on their own if they're able. And again, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson, so make sure you pick a game that will keep your child's math facts strong. We have not been working on a lot of arithmetic here, so you definitely want to keep up those math facts. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 119. Now, if your lesson manual was printed in 2019 or before, there is a correction listed for this lesson. Also, if you have purchased or if you purchased electronic worksheets in 2019 or before, worksheet 83 has a correction as well. So you're going to want to make sure you make those changes before you teach the lesson and handing out the worksheet to your child. Now for the warm-up section, your child is going to do section 2 on warm-up practice sheet number 5. As always, the lessons are the answers are listed in the lesson manual. Look at the section called Introducing Factors. Here you are to give your child the equation 5 times 4 equals 20. And you will ask your child what the product of this equation is. 5 times 4 equals 20. The product is 20, the answer to a multiplication problem. So it would be 20. Then you will explain to your child that both the numbers 5 and 4 are called factors. And then you will have your child enter those factors on the abacus. So here's an abacus. And when we write this equation or put this equation on the abacus, it's going to be 5 taken 4 times. So make sure that you have 4 rows of 5 beads. 5 times 4. All right, well, then you're going to go down to the section called Finding the Missing Factor. And in this section, you're going to write out the equation 6 times something equals 24. And then your child is going to use the abacus to figure out what the missing factor is. Well, we don't know how many rows there are, but we do know that there are 6 beads on a row, right? So you're going to start with that information. Now, there are several on the second page of the lesson. There are a couple different ways to solve this, and it's what they call the take and give strategy. And basically how that's done is they start with putting the product, the 24, on the abacus, and then moving beads back and forth, taking and giving until you get the result of what 6 times 4 is. Now, there is one specific way shown in the lesson manual, but there are numerous ways to solve this problem. So let me give you a couple more examples. When my kids did this, we were working on getting to 6 beads in one row. So my child would take anything that's over 6, like in this first row, I have 4 too many beads. So I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to put it, we'll put it on this row here, the next one down. This one also has too many, but I also notice I have too few here. So I'm going to start, this is the take and give, right? We're giving and then taking, or taking and then giving. Then I've got 2 more here, and I need to add 2 more. And now my rows are all even with 6 beads in each row. So I know that 6 times 4, 6 beads taken 4 times equals 24. Now, what my kids did, they didn't go to the answer. They didn't start with the answer. They instead started with the 6. So they would start with 6 and they would just enter 6 on the abacus until they saw that they had 24 as their answer. So again, that's just another way of solving it. How your child solves it is just fine, as long as they're understanding the concept. Start with the example in the lesson manual and then move from there. Let your child know that there are more than one way to solve or do this activity. Now, once your child completes this activity, you're going to give them another problem, which is 7 times something equals 35. And again, you're going to have your child work through that problem as well. Then you're going to give your child worksheet 83, and they are only going to complete the top section of worksheet 83. The rest of that worksheet will be completed in lesson 120. Let your child use the abacus as needed for that worksheet. Again, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson. However, you will want to make sure you pick a game to keep your child's math facts strong. You may also want to add a multiplication math card game because this lesson is working on multiplication. It will help refresh those multiplication math facts. You will continue to work with multiplication and division here in a couple lessons. So the stronger they are with their multiplication math facts at this juncture, the better and easier those lessons will be, these coming lessons. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 120. For the warm-up section, your child is going to complete section 3 on warm-up practice sheet number 5. And again, the answers are listed in the lesson manual. Now take a look at the section called Finding the Missing Factor. This is a very similar activity as what your child did in lesson 119 using the give and take strategy. However, instead of the first number given in the equation, we are given the second number. And that means we know how many rows on the abacus we can use, but we do not know how many beads will go on each row. So let me walk you through the problem they give you, which is something times 4 equals 12. Well, we do not know how many beads are going to go on each row, but we do know how many rows there are, which there are 4 rows. So if I have 12 on this abacus, what I want to do is make sure I have enough beads to get to each, to cover each row. So I'm just going to start playing around and switching around, take 2 and then 2, take 2, oops, 2 and then 2. All right, I have 4 rows, but I still have too many beads on this row. So let's go ahead and just start. We just shifted one at a time, actually, to be honest with you, with my kids when they were first learning this. And then, so here we find out all 4 of my rows are even. So 3 times 4 equals 12. Now, like I said, what my kids did was they actually worked 1 bead at a time. So when they worked through that, they would actually scoot just 1 bead over, 1 bead over, 1 bead over until all of those rows were even. Once your child completes that activity, they're going to do another one, which is something times 3 equals 15, which means each row, or there will be a total of 3 rows having, we don't know how many beads. So let your child work through that using the abacus. Then you're going to give your child worksheet 83 to complete. They did the first part of that worksheet in lesson 119, and then they're going to finish it up in this lesson. Again, let your child use the abacus if they need it. The answers are listed in the math card game, or in the lesson manual. Again, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson, so you're going to want to pick a game to play with your child. Again, you might want to go ahead and pick a multiplication math card game to reinforce this lesson and prepare them for the lessons next week. Also, level D, which we'll be covering next year, will really work on multiplication. Multiplication is really hard for students, for many, many students. So getting a jump start on that would be very, very helpful for them next year. Well, that's it for the lesson for this week. So if you have any questions or concern about a lesson, or if your child is struggling with something, give us a call or email us. We're here to help. I look forward to seeing you next week when we cover lessons 121 to 124. Keep up the good work. You're doing great. We are coming to the end of it all. Have a great week, everybody.